Your last mistake was me. I never thought of myself as paranoid. But if you grew up on the streets of Pittsburgh, served in hot zones, and now run a business moving 6 figures in cash, you learn to notice the little things. Even the tiniest. Like how Brian suddenly started talking a little too gently. Or how the guards, usually as silent as stone statues, kept touching their holsters today, like it was their first time. Funny, if it didn't stink so bad. You sure the meeting was moved? I asked, staring out the window at the dark, unmarked van trailing us. Because it sure as hell doesn't look like we're heading to a restaurant. Relax, Brian waved it off. They just changed the location. No big deal. The client's got his quirks. You know how they love their cloak and dagger crap. Yeah, especially when the meeting's at an abandoned warehouse in an industrial shithole. Classic setup. It's either the deal of the century, or I wake up with my kidneys chilling in a cooler. The guards didn't even smirk. One of them, Lance, I think, was sitting like he'd just realized there's no toilet paper on the roll, clenched so tight you could hear his teeth grinding. I exhaled through my nose and turned my eyes back to the road. The warehouse really was abandoned. Rusted gate, busted chain, graffiti-tagged walls, and wide-open doors. Brian, I said quietly, I've got one very polite question for you. Shoot. He tried to smile, but his cheek twitched. Just don't start acting paranoid. You're not about to stick a knife in my back, you son of a bitch? He laughed. Oh, come on, Kev. We're friends. We serve together. Remember how you dragged my sorry ass across the river with a hole in my leg? I remember. Starting to think that was a mistake. That's when I noticed the driver take the wrong turn. Instead of the fenced-off parking lot, he veered hard left, straight into cracked asphalt and overgrown weeds. The kind of place even pigeons are too scared to land. Something inside me howled. Yeah, I muttered. Here we go. I didn't wait for it to go down. I lunged forward like I was back in Iraq, grabbed the wheel, slammed my elbow into the driver's face. He yelped. The car swerved. I yanked the wheel, pulling us left. One of the guards screamed, "What the hell are you doing?" Too late. The car screeched into a ditch like a dog diving headfirst into manure. Impact. Shattering glass. Then air. Cold and free. I was launched through the windshield like a rag doll. Slammed into the mud, rolled a few feet, and got up limping. My back felt like a bus had just rear-ended my spine. Sons of bitches. Behind me, the second van's brakes squealed. I turned. The dark van skidded to a stop, and the goons started pouring out. 1, 2, 3. They spilled like roaches into the light. Black pants, jackets, sidearms. I counted maybe 10 before I stopped bothering. They fanned out like it was choreographed. Well, shit, I exhaled. Good thing I didn't wear a white shirt. That would have been a little too on the nose for a corpse. I ran, limping hard, but my body remembered. Someone behind shouted, "Stop, Kevin!" Like I was dumb enough to listen. The first one I heard before I saw. Left side. I fainted, and when he rounded the corner, I drove my elbow into his nose. A wet crack, pure, like snapping glass. He dropped, clutching his face. I didn't finish him. No time. But now I had his pistol. Thanks, brother, I whispered and ran on. The next one caught up to me near some busted scaffolding. He came around the corner, yelling freeze, with a pistol out. Aren't you sweet? I said, and threw a brick I'd picked up mid-sprint. He dodged, but too slow. I leapt and drove the knife from my boot into his throat. He didn't even know he was dead, just stared like he was wondering, why can't I breathe? I took his assault rifle and felt a bit more like myself again. All right, pigs. Who's next? Gunfire broke out behind some containers. I rolled under one and fired blind. Someone screamed, bullseye. Another cursed, shit. He's armed. What the hell were you expecting, Hugs? Another goon came from the side. This one wasn't dumb. Low stance, safety off. I dove sideways, flipped over a log, and shot him in the thigh. He howled like a puppy and tried to crawl. I walked up, dumped the mag into his chest, and muttered coldly, "Say hi to Brian for me." After that, it was hell. They came from both flanks, from above, below. One genius tried to get on the roof for a better angle. I shot him in the knee. He screamed, fell, and smashed his jaw on the concrete. One of them thought he was smart and tossed a grenade. Only problem? Idiot forgot to pull the pin. I laughed. Really? First day on the job, dumbass. I ran up, cracked him in the skull with the butt of my rifle, and took his grenade. I'd find a use for it. And I did. When 3 of them tried flanking me through a rusted door, I waited, lobbed the grenade like old times, and whispered, "Gift from Kevin. Enjoy." Boom. Like a damn 4th of July finale. One flew back first into the iron gate, leaving a bloody signature. I was panting, tired, but still upright. Stepped into a small room to catch my breath. Heard footsteps behind me. Fast. Sharp. I turned, lifted the rifle, but, puffed, a sound like spit. Something stung my neck. Sharp, sudden pain. I grabbed the spot, found a thin dart with a tiny syringe. "You serious?" I rasped, trying to lift the gun, but my limbs didn't obey. Legs buckled. The world tilted. My eyes started closing on their own. "Cowardly bastards." I groaned, collapsing to my knees. The last thing I heard, footsteps and a voice. "He's alive. Perfect. Pick him up. The boss wants him intact." Then, darkness. Consciousness didn't return right away. First came the pressure in the back of my skull. Then the cold. Metal. The smell, motor oil, iron, blood, and something else, familiar, but nasty, like someone else's sweat in your bed. I opened my eyes. Slowly. Light stabbed my pupils. Harsh, clinical, merciless white light. "Oh, finally. I thought you were dead," Brian's voice. The same tone he used when he found rats in the storage room. I tried moving. Useless. Straps. Thick, reinforced. Chest, shoulders, wrists, thighs. Strapped down like cargo. I was lying on a table. Cold steel sucked the heat from my skin. The room was bare, except for a cheap spotlight swaying above and Brian, sitting across from me on a folding metal chair like he was here for a show. "Feel that, Kev? That's what it's like to be the product instead of the dealer." He nodded at me, smirking. "So, buddy, wanna talk?" I said nothing, partly because I bit my tongue on the way down, and now the taste of blood coated my mouth. Mostly because I wanted to hear everything before I ripped out his throat with my teeth. "You know, you've been getting on my nerves for a long time. Like 6 years. I just couldn't figure out how to get rid of you. I mean, you pulled me out of the gutter, gave me a shot, yeah? Thanks for that, really." He nodded, almost with respect. I didn't even answer. Didn't blink. Let him choke on his own theatrics. Running cars across borders. It was all cute, really. We made a great team. You were the brains and the balls. I was the face and the connections. Only problem was, you had this flaw. You were too righteous. Like honest. In our business, that's a terminal diagnosis. He stood up and began pacing around the room, like a schoolteacher explaining algebra to a room full of idiots. "When Silas Grant approached us, you should have said yes. Remember him? Polite guy, smile like a dictator's. He offered us a brilliant setup. We'd move the cars and inside them. As a bonus, a couple of kilos of something illegal, maybe a girl in the trunk, sometimes just powder under the seat. And what did you say?" He spun around and shouted mockingly, imitating my voice. "I don't work with scum, Brian." I snorted. Silently. Because yeah, that's exactly what I said. He stepped in closer. Way too close. I could feel his breath. Mint gum laced with something rotten. I said yes, Kev. Because I don't have your self-righteous bleeding heart. Because I want to live, damn it, not keep fixing busted-ass Cadillacs from Jersey just to make the mortgage. Silas gave me a shot. One chance to remove you. And I said, gladly. He laughed, then sat back down. And no, I didn't kill you right away. Because you owed me this, understanding, the realization, the decay. I needed you to feel it all. Welcome to my little workshop. He spread his arms. The walls, dimly lit steel. Tools hanging on hooks. Crowbars, chains, tasers, knives. The air reeked of old horrors. This is where I keep people, Kev. You know, like others keep wine. I keep memories. Screams. Echoes of pain. And a few valuable things. He pulled something small from his pocket. Showed it to me. I recognized it instantly. Black silk panties, delicately embroidered. On the front, the letter K. Well, ring a bell, he grinned. It's that lingerie you gave Cordelia for your anniversary. So soft, so expensive. Don't worry, she's cool with sharing. I'd even say, she's enthusiastically supportive. I clenched my jaw so hard my joint cracked. He leaned in. Yeah, Kev, we're fucking. And not a we slipped up once or twice kind of thing. It's systematic. In the bedroom where your kid used to watch cartoons. On the kitchen table where you ate sandwiches. Oh, and in your car, too. Remember that Mustang Cabrio you were prepping for that collector? Well, it's got some of our memories now. I jerked against the straps. They creaked. My neck stretched like a rope. If I could reach him, I'd tear his throat out. I'm going to kill you, Brian. I'll kill you, then come back from the dead just to do it again. I'll carve out your teeth and make you eat them. He smirked. Oh, here comes the show. Of course. You're Super Kev, savior of used cars and betrayed bimbos. He pulled out a phone. Want to know what's happening with Kyle? I froze. He's already en route to Silas. Kid's gonna make a great bargaining chip. Might even learn something useful. Like how not to be a piece of shit like his old man. Guess who's driving him? He dialed. Come on, guess. No. Here's a hint. Loves lattes, yoga, and never loved you. He put it on speaker. Ringing. Then a voice. Hi, honey. I recognized it instantly. Cordelia. Cold. Confident. As always. Want to say a few words to your heroic hubby? He's here. Very dramatic. Brian held the phone to my ear. Hello, Kevin. Her voice cut like a knife. I'm glad it's finally over. I don't have to pretend anymore. You mean nothing to me. You were a mistake I made. And Kyle. Kyle was just an unfortunate byproduct. But now it's different. Now Brian and I, we have power, money, a future. And you? You've got that table and agony. I stayed silent. Didn't blink. Just stared at the ceiling. You were never a man, she continued. Just a machine. Moved money, didn't feel. I faked it, for the stability, for the lifestyle. But you? You were hollow. And honestly, I'm glad I'll never see you again. Brian took the phone back, smirking. She's eloquent. I always admired that in her. He turned to the door and clapped his hands. Hey, bring him in. Let's have some fun. He walked in. Small, wiry, with a face like a rat that survived a fire. Hair tied in a greasy knot. Wore an apron. Smiled a slimy smile. Kev, meet Joe. Very interesting guy. Collects fingernails. Expert in discomfort. I'm sure you'll have loads to talk about. Joe stepped closer. In his hands, a scalpel and pliers. He didn't speak. Just smiled. Like I was his favorite cut of meat. Well, I'm off, Brian said, patting my cheek. Deals to sign. Futures to build. You know how it is. Don't miss me. Try to enjoy yourself. He left. The bastard stayed. I didn't realize at first what hit my chest, sweat or blood. Then the burning hit. Blood, definitely. And mine. A comforting reminder. I was still alive. Probably. The little Asian bastard took his time. Like we had all the hours in the world. He even turned on music. A screeching, distorted electronic mess that sounded like a seagull getting its wings ripped off. Like the rhythm, he asked with an accent, bearing yellow, crooked teeth. I always work to music. It calms the nerves. And you know, makes the pain feel musical. Hope you've got a playlist for when you're burning. I rasped. My tongue felt like sandpaper. Start with something uplifting. Maybe Highway to Hell. He giggled. A sound I hated instantly. Like a cat with a cracked skull trying to get revenge. First, he pulled out a knife. Not a scalpel, an old military blade. Razor sharp. Notched. A gift from my uncle. He used it to skin boars. Imagine how much you resemble one, he said, drawing the blade along my arm. The cut was precise. Shallow, but it burned. Blood welled up instantly, and I gritted my teeth. Not because of the pain. Because I knew. This was just the warm-up. First layer, like a fine fish, he said, running a finger along the slice. Now the real fun begins. Then came the nail. Slow. Deliberate. He clamped my finger in his pliers and started to pull. Don't worry, he whispered. You've got 10 of these. We'll have a lovely evening. I didn't scream. I didn't give him that. I just stared at him, locking eyes as he pulled, and imagined all the ways I'd crush his throat when the time came. The nail popped free. Blood followed. Want to spice it up? He asked, taking out a tiny jar. Himalayan salt. I never skimp on pleasure. As he rubbed it into the open wound, I shut my eyes. A white flare exploded behind them. The pain was so intense it tossed me into nothingness. Then slowly, I came back. Still breathing? He sounded impressed. Nice. Silas will be happy we didn't lose you too quick. He switched on the current. I felt my muscles convulse. The straps pulled tight, my chest arched, and my body screamed on my behalf. Make my day, say mommy, he howled, pressing the button. I exhaled when he finally turned it off. Yeah, now I'm definitely awake, I said, voice hoarse but steady. And I think I'm slightly buzzing. He zapped me again. And again. Several times. I felt the metal anchoring the restraints begin to give, subtly, faintly. the pulse of electricity vibrating through the frame. I jerked my body with everything I had, forcing tiny shifts, microscopic loosening. Each time the current hit, I yanked my wrist, just a fraction of a millimeter. He thought he was killing me. In reality, he was helping me break free. "Did you know human skin smells different depending on the kind of fear?" he said, sniffing the air. "Yours smells like grilled chicken breast. Quite pleasant." He reached for a new tool, a scalpel, slender like a dentist's pick. "You know where we're headed next?" The eyes. Eyes are poetry in pain. So delicate. So vulnerable. He came closer. I saw the scalpel rise. I stared into his eyes, murky, revoltingly alive. I yanked my hand. It came free. I struck instantly, not the face, the wrist. He didn't expect it. The scalpel slipped from his grasp and buried itself in his shoulder. He screamed and staggered back, clutching the wound as blood spurted from beneath his arm, splattering his shirt. "Surprise, asshole," I said, unbuckling the remaining straps. He stumbled, tripped. I slid off the table, muscles twitching, but I was upright. He was panicking. The only thing he'd had was the element of surprise. Now he was just a pathetic butcher with tools. He ripped the scalpel from his shoulder and screamed, "I'll carve you up, freak. You're dead." He charged. But I wasn't tied anymore. I wasn't broken. I'd been waiting for this. I grabbed his wrist, twisted, used his momentum, and flipped him over, slamming him onto the table. He howled as his back hit the metal. "Big fan of tables, huh?" I sneered, grabbing the scalpel and driving it into his other shoulder. "Here's one for symmetry. They say perfection belongs only to God." He shrieked. I punched him once, twice, a third time. Teeth scattered like crumbs from a stale pie. He thrashed. I strapped him down with the same restraints that had held me, tight enough that his skin turned pale. "Well, chef," I said, twirling the scalpel. "Time to taste your own electricity." I connected the electrodes to his chest, mimicking his previous movements. "Time to freshen up, scumbag," I grinned. "This'll wake you right up." I turned the dial. He jolted. "How's that? Awake yet?" I cranked the power. He started to shake, to seize, foam bubbling at his mouth. The scent of burning flesh filled the room. "Don't pass out now. You said pain makes music, didn't you? Want a soundtrack? Let's add a little fire to the mix." I flipped the final switch. His skin began to smoke. Sparks crackled along his arms, and he roared. "Burn this into memory," I said, watching him convulse. "I'm not meat. I'm the blade you sharpened yourself." He let out one last rasp. Then, silence. The room was thick with the stench of scorched flesh. I tore off the remaining straps, walked to the sink, splashed water on my face. The blood came off. The rage didn't. Time to get out. The electric cable still sizzled as I walked the corridor, scalpel in hand. The bastard on the table had stopped twitching. The hallway stank of cooked meat, smoke, and fear, like a slaughterhouse moments before the next bull realizes it's his turn. The walls were metal, painted, and peeling. A flickering light to the left, a shadow to the right, shaped like a hanged man. I wondered how many patients had lain here before me, and how many got out. I already knew the answer. I'd be the first. I stepped into the first room. Light. 3 men. One at a workbench, sharpening a blade. Another in a chair, watching monitors. Third sipping coffee, laughing at something on his phone. I entered. Calmly. The first only had time to turn his head. "Hey, could you point me to the exit from hell?" The scalpel went into his eye. He gurgled. I pulled the blade free, slashed his throat, blood sprayed like a hose. The second lunged for a pistol. I kicked the chair under his knees. He collapsed. I stepped in, drove the scalpel into the base of his neck, between the windpipe and collarbone. He gurgled, twitched. The third screamed, dropped his coffee, ran. I grabbed the first one's knife, hurled it, hit his thigh. He fell. I approached, looming. "Don't worry. This'll be quick." "Well, quickish." I stomped on his chest, plunged the knife into his liver, twisted. I heard his breath turn to a whistle. He died staring at his phone screen. A chat was open. With some girl. Hope he managed to say, "I love you." Then again, hopefully not. I moved on. Next room. Dark, but footsteps echoed. 2 ahead. One had a rifle. The other walked like he was in charge. I picked up a broken rebar off the floor. Heavy, rusty, straight, like my intentions. I hurled it, nailed the guard in the throat. He dropped, clutching at air that had long since fled. The second turned, I was already on him. Grabbed the rifle, smashed the butt into his jaw. Bone cracked. He tried to rise. I struck again, this time at the temple. He stilled. I took the rifle, checked the mag full, moved forward. The corridor led to the main floor, wide, lit, cluttered with boxes, tools, junk, full of voices, arguments, laughter, metal clangs. I entered like I owned the place. Calm, confident, and opened fire. The spray landed clean, shoulder, chest, throat. One screamed, alert, and took another round through the ear. One ducked behind a crate. I stepped up, placed the rifle on the edge, fired a tight burst. Blood flowed like a faucet. One survived. Fell, covered his head. Don't shoot, please. I'm just the tech. I didn't know. I just clean wires. I knelt, looked him in the eye. And you check the corpses don't short circuit, huh? He blinked. I shot him in the mouth. Less whining. Ahead, stairs. Someone leapt at me from above. Stupid. I sidestepped. He flew past. I grabbed his neck, slammed the back of his skull into the steps. Once. Twice. Thrice. Until brain met daylight. 3 stood at the top. He's alive. How the hell did he get out? One panicked. Reached for a grenade. Don't, I said. Smells cheap in here. You blow this, and it'll be wet dog and brain stew all over the floor. They froze. I threw the empty rifle. While they flinched, I grabbed a sledgehammer off the wall. They didn't even process it in time. First, a swing to the leg. Bone splintered out. Second, crushed through the ribcage. Third, tried to flee. Caught it in the back of the head. Brains sprayed the wall. A few drops hit the lamp, tinting the room pink. I stepped into the industrial yard. More of them. Trying to force the gate. One was already climbing into a pickup. I hurled the hammer. It smashed into his knee like a meteor hitting glass. He shrieked. Collapsed. Crawled, leaving a trail of blood and regret. I stood over him. Hey, cowboy. Feel like playing trivia? Please. I don't know anything, he croaked. Tell you what. You give me Brian's location, and you keep one leg. Stay silent, and you lose both. He groaned, but no coherent words came out. I raised the sledgehammer. I can't hear you. I brought it down. The second leg. A crack, like a crowbar through glass. He howled. I crouched, looked him in the eyes. Please. He left. To Silas. Old power station in Deltona. I'm not lying. Oh, well done. We have a winner. You were in that room with the monitors, weren't you? Laughing while they carved me up, right? He just sobbed. So you've got a sense of humor. Let's have one last laugh. Sledgehammer to the head. One blow, a sickening crunch. Second mush. Third, just for principle. Silence. I stood. Breathed. Around me, blood, corpses, smoke, ash, moaning. A proper monument to betrayal. I picked up a rifle off the floor. Checked the mag loaded. Time to pay Silas a visit. I exited the van 5 blocks from the target. Old power plant. Deltona. Industrial wasteland forgotten by God, but not by money. A massive structure, blackened pipes, overgrown surveillance towers, and thick muscle along the perimeter. Judging by their coordination, gear, and weapons, Silas didn't cheap out on scum. Whoever he was, he built himself an army. Fine. I'll have my own Waterloo. Except here, I'm Wellington, Napoleon, and the devil rolled into one. I started from the canal side. An old concrete pipe led under the outer fence section. Quiet, dark, smelled like mildew, then piss. Someone had pissed themselves here before me. Hopefully they're dead now. I emerged behind the first patrol. Idiot was buried in his phone, chewing gum. I wrapped my arm around his throat and squeezed. He writhed. Tried to wedge his hand under my arm. Too late. A quick slam of his head against the wall. Crack. He slumped like a bag of spoiled meat. I took his knife. Sleek, steel, Italian-made. At least these bastards had one good taste. Next, a pair of guards on the tower. One with a rifle, the other watching and smoking. I crept up the ladder, quiet as a nightmare. Bit dull tonight, huh? I said behind them. They turned. I slit the first one's throat. The second reached for his radio. I kicked him in the gut, then the face. He flipped over the railing. Heavy thud below. Something broke. For good. I grabbed the rifle. A beauty, scope, suppressor. Perfect for night safari. And so the hunt began. First shot, the neck. He spasmed, choked. Second, temple. Silent, smooth, like flipping a switch. The third heard footsteps and turned around. I shot him in the knee. He collapsed, screaming. I walked up to him. He reached out, pleading. Did you scream when they took Kyle? I asked. He didn't get it. Even better. I snapped his neck. Patrol shift on the south side, 4 bastards. 1 up front, 3 trailing. Tight formation. But they had a blind spot. I climbed onto a roof and waited until they passed underneath. Jumped. Landed on the last. Drove a knife into his skull. Second spun. Caught a boot to the knee. Crunch, howl. Third pulled a gun. I struck his elbow. Jammed the blade under his jaw. Fourth tried to run. I grabbed the gun. Shot him in the back of the head. Jogging's a poor career choice, I said, stepping over the body. The radio on the corpse crackled. South Point 2, do you copy? I picked it up. Just meet here, I said. But they won't be answering. Tossed it into the brush. Next up, checkpoint bunker. Lit up, concrete, 2 inside. 1 reading, 1 tapping at a tablet. Dry bored eyes. Not built for action. I crawled to the side. Slid a smoke grenade under the door, courtesy of one of the previous bastards. Flash. Smoke filled the booth. They started coughing, opened the door. I entered like a father walking into his teenager's disaster zone. Clean up this mess, boys, I said. First, knuckle duster to the face. Teeth sprayed, blood on the wall. Second, kick to the gut, then the ear, and a finishing blow against the corner cabinet. He slid down, leaving a piece of skull on the metal. I took their keycard. Unlocked the next ring of security. Now came the real work. No blind spots. Just meat. Dogs. Sharpshooters. Cameras. But I was ready. Took out 3 as they passed the generator room. 1 down with a butt stroke. Second, hamstring slit. Third pulled a knife. I knocked it loose, broke his wrist, stabbed the same blade into his liver. Now you're on pain duty, I whispered in his ear. Someone finally noticed things were off. Alarm blared. About time, I said. It was getting dull. Then came the organized scum. Body armor. Tactics. Yelling commands. Push forward. Left flank. Suppressing fire. I tossed a smoke bomb. Dashed to a truck. Hopped in. Engine turned over first try. I floored it into the crowd. Bodies scattered like bowling pins. 1 stuck to the hood. Another flew into a wall. I jumped out with a crowbar. The rest opened fire. I ducked behind concrete. Sprint. Blow to the helmet. Dented. Second, splatter. Grabbed his shotgun. 1 chest. 2 leg. He stopped firing. Last one dropped to his knees. I'm just security. I didn't know. I didn't do anything. Just watch them slice me up, huh? He closed his eyes. I jammed the knife under his chin. Up. Silent. His stare, like a supermarket fish. 1 row left. There lay the bunker entrance. Thick doors, guards with heavy weapons, even riot shields. I found a gas canister. Doused the entrance. Lit it. Smelled like hell opened up. Someone ran out, coughing. Met him with a boot to the chest, finished him with the butt of a rifle. The smoke confused them. Shots missed. I moved like a shadow. 1 spun into me. I snatched his pistol, emptied the mag into 3 behind him. He tried to flee. I bit his cheek, then snapped his neck. Outer perimeter, clear. Behind me, nothing but corpses. Ahead, the door. I stepped close. Pressed my ear. Silence. But not the comforting kind. I'm coming, bastards, I whispered. Don't go anywhere. The iron door creaked open with my kick. The stench hit. Sweat, gunpowder, old pipes, and smoldering death. I was inside. Corridors dark, but not empty. First bastard burst from a side room, gun raised. Eyes wide with panic. Stop, he screamed. I am stopped. You're the one going down. A shot to the throat. He clutched his neck, dropped the pistol, and collapsed like a sack of rotting chickens. I snatched up the gun and kept moving. Over the radio, someone was already shouting. Alert. Intruder inside. I repeat. Hostile inside the building. I chuckled. Not a hostile. A liquidator. I turned the corner, 2 guards in armor. 1 managed to squeeze off a burst. Bullets whipped past, but I lunged forward, drove my boot into the first one's knee. It cracked like a dry chip. The second got a bullet straight through the eye. His face burst like a watermelon hit with a shotgun. In the warehouse, there was a crate. Metal. Stamped with, warning, volatile ordnance. I cracked it open. Grinned. Oh, babies. Just in time for dinner. Explosives. Incendiaries. Phosphorus. Even a few labeled for close quarters therapy. I pulled a pin, rolled the first grenade across the floor. It slid under a workbench where someone was sitting. Boom. Splinters, blood, guts. All of it sprayed upward in a glorious fountain. Next, a phosphorus grenade, tossed deeper inside. Flash. Someone caught fire, started running and screaming like a human torch. "Hey, buddy," I shouted. "You seen yourself in a mirror? You're burning like Brian's love for my wife." Screams intensified. Someone yelled, "Burn, motherfucker." I had no clue who he meant. Maybe himself. Phosphorus is a merciless teacher. I kept walking, lobbing grenades left and right. Explosions. Flames. People fell, burst, burned, came apart in pieces that clung to walls, floors, and each other. One came flying out with a metal rod through his chest, crawling toward a table. I stepped over and gently pushed the rebar in deeper. "Go on, brother." All the way. Blood sprayed like champagne from a shaken bottle. Another tried hiding behind piping. I lobbed a small incendiary. He emerged aflame, wailing, "Help! God, please! God's off shift," I said, finishing him with a burst to the chest. He fell still smoldering. I advanced down the corridor, leaving behind a trail of burns, screams, and detonations. Each grenade wasn't just a weapon, it was a declaration. Every corpse was a ledger entry. Every name, if I'd known it, was now crossed out. No forgiveness. I turned left. Saw 3 men. One raised his hands. "I'm not with them. I'm just the accountant." "Oh yeah? What? You bill me for the torture sessions." I shot him in the gut. He groaned and dropped. Another tried to pull a knife. Bullet to the temple. Brain on tile. The third lunged at me. I grabbed a crowbar from the floor, slammed it into his knee. He fell. I pressed him to the floor with my boot and drove the crowbar through his chest. "Let's lock this position down, shall we?" Ahead was a massive door. I could feel it. That was the final act. But not just any ending. An ending with my son. I opened it slowly. Inside, red emergency lights flickering. Crates piled in the corners, looked like explosives. Smelled of ammonia, sweat, burning oil, and fear. Silas stood at the center. Tall, gaunt, with a vile grin. Holding Kyle. Close. Gun to the boy's head. Kyle looked at me. No tears. Just terror. Small, trembling, but standing his ground. "Don't move," Silas barked. "Drop the weapon or I blow his skull off." On 3. I let the rifle fall. Raised my hands. All right. Easy. Not touching anything." Silas sneered. "Smart boy. But too late. Die, you piece of shit." He pointed the gun at me. I saw his finger tighten. And then, an explosion. Something ignited to the left. Crates. Fire spread. Second, third, fourth detonation. Chain reaction. Silas staggered. Shot went wide. Bullet screamed past me, shattering a pipe. I pulled the pistol from my waistband. Fired. Hit him in the shoulder. He screamed. Kyle broke free, dove behind a corner, hiding. Silas raised the gun again. I fired once more, knocked the weapon from his hand. He howled, clutching his fingers. I stepped closer. He tried to rise. I kicked him in the groin. He collapsed, choking, folding over himself. "This is for my son. For my wife. For everything," I said, driving my boot into his face. He flew backward, wheezing. I picked up a chunk of pipe. Heavy as betrayal. Rusted. Sharp. "Well, bastard, you wanted to be a partner? Pushing garbage drugs with Brian?" He moved his lips. Tried to say something. "Shut up." I brought the pipe down. The sound, like a watermelon being obliterated by a bat. His face turned to pulp. One more swing. Pipe sank deeper, all the way to the back of his skull. Silas had nothing left to say. Kyle was shaking, but still holding together. An explosion behind us blew part of the wall inward. I pulled him down, wrapped myself around him. "It's okay, kid. It's over. Dad, don't look. Just hold on to me." I led us through a side corridor. Used to be ventilation. The floor flared beneath our steps. Fire licked the walls. Metal chunks rained from above. We sprinted past a row of barrels. Flames reached them. Explosion. I shielded Kyle with my body. Finally, an exit. Fresh air hit our faces, though even it reeked of fire and death. The parking lot. Cars. Empty. Abandoned. I settled Kyle in an old Jeep. Door unlocked. Keys in the ignition. Like someone planned to escape, but never did. "Sit tight, Kyle. No matter what, don't get out until I come back." "Got it. Dad, where are you going?" "To settle a debt, son." I shut the door. He stared at me through the glass. Those small eyes, full of pain. Not just a look, it was a reason to keep breathing. And then I saw them. In the distance, through the smoke-choked wreckage, two figures crept along. A man and a woman. He wore a guard's jacket, but that stride, I knew it even through the haze. And her, running shoes, fancy jacket, hair in disarray. Brian and Cordelia, the traitors, hand in hand. There you are, I muttered. I followed. Halfway there, my eyes caught the open back of a truck. Inside, a flamethrower. Real. Full tank, harness straps, hose coiled. Ready for use. As if someone left it just for me. I smirked. All right, let's do this the old-fashioned way. I slung it over my shoulder, checked the pressure gauge, aimed the nozzle forward. Marched on. Heavy steps. Sure. The scent of burning gas, meat, and plastic trailed behind me. They were already inside a car, frantically trying to start it. Her trembling hands twisted the key. He screamed. Faster, start it. Cord, fucking start it. The engine coughed. Spluttered. Refused to start. I stepped right in front of them, dead center, across the hood. The entire front of the car lay before me like an open stage. I stood with the flamethrower aimed, as if it were a microphone before a farewell speech. And then they saw me. First her, then him. Their faces. God, I'd hang those expressions on my wall. Eyes blown wide, jaws dropped. Brian sank into the seat like it might swallow him. Cordelia recoiled from the wheel. Panic. Terror. Pure, unfiltered doom. I said nothing. I simply pulled the trigger. A fiery jet surged forward like a dragon exhaling. Flames engulfed the hood, licked at the windshield. The glass burst. The interior caught in a heartbeat, filling with fire. Two silhouettes convulsed. Cordelia was first. She tumbled out of the car, burning like a living torch, shrieking and choking on her own screams. Then Brian. He rolled onto the asphalt, wrapped in flame, slapping at the ground in desperation. Help. Ayah. I walked closer. Hurts, doesn't it? I warned you. The flames reached the gas tank. I was already at a safe distance when it detonated. The explosion sent a wave of heat crashing over me. The wreckage, charred, dismembered, scattered across the parking lot. I exhaled, turned, and walked back. I reached the Jeep, opened the door. Kyle was staring at me, afraid, but relieved. Is it over? He asked. I slid in beside him, turned the ignition. It's over, son. We're just going home now. I cast one last glance at the inferno behind us, smiled. I hate dishonest partners, and drove forward, without looking back. Coming home was strange. Sometimes, silence hits harder than a point-blank shot. The vehicle smelled of fire, blood, and fists clenched down to the bone. But Kyle was asleep in the seat, wrapped in my coat. Small, scarred by someone else's cruelty, but safe. That was all that mattered. The house hadn't changed. The clean facade, the fence, the porch where Cordelia used to sip morning coffee and pretend to care. Everything looked the same. Only Kyle and I were no longer the same. I carried him inside. He stirred when I laid him on the couch. Are we home? He mumbled. Yes, son. For good. He smiled through his drowsiness. The first real look in days. No fear. No pain. The next morning, the purge began. Everyone in the office stared like they'd seen a ghost. Brian had vanished, and suddenly Kevin returned, leather jacket, fresh scars, and a hellstorm behind the eyes. Meeting. All hands. And bring coffee. I take it black now. No sugar. Like life. The first to go were those who looked away too quickly. Those who signed additional invoices, who nodded at Brian with a little too much enthusiasm. One of them, Trevor, tried to mutter something. Kev, listen, we thought you were. Well, you were gone. We just wanted the business to. Trevor, I cut in. You know which part of a car fails first. What? The one that rattles at the first shake. You rattle. You're fired. I dismissed 9 people that day. Kept only the ones who could meet my gaze, even when the fire behind mine was blazing. I hired replacements myself. No HR. No references. Only face-to-face interviews. I watched how they held their coffee. How they sat. Sometimes I even handed them a pistol. Their reactions said more than any resume. Business surged. Abruptly. More clients. More orders. People sensed that discipline had taken root in our garage. Every bolt double-checked. Every deal clean. Trust was earned again. And money flowed like a river. Me? I stopped reading the accounting sheets. I stared out the window. At the schoolyard, where Kyle had started Aikido. At his laughter. at the way he gripped a wooden katana and told the mirror, "Dad, look, I'm just like you. We spent more time together. I cut meetings to the bone, delegated 50%, ignored the other 50. We headed north, to a lakeside cabin. First thing Kyle did was find a fishing rod. Dad, do you know how to fish? No, but I'm excellent at grilling the fish others catch. So I catch, you cook? Deal. Just don't tell anyone I can cook." He looked at me, smiling. "Okay, Dad." I said nothing, then hugged him. "Just remember, you've got a father. And a chef." At the lake, we lived like savages. Sleeping bags, campfire meals, spring water from the source. I taught him to shoot, first with a bow, then with a rifle. He picked it up fast. Thought it was a game. "Dad, did you shoot bad guys with this?" "Something like it. But I mostly used my hands. More eco-friendly. And them? Well, they made great fertilizer afterward." He laughed. And that laugh, it pulled me back from the abyss. It made me feel alive again. When we returned, we created a tradition. Every Friday, pizza night, movies, and discussions about what we'd do in the hero's place. "Here," he'd say, pointing at the screen. I'd punch right away. No waiting. I'd nod. But then there'd be no dialogue, no tension, no drama. That's all garbage. The key is a clean hit. You learn fast, my little assassin. "Dad, can I work for you when I grow up?" "Of course, but you'll start on probation." He laughed again, and I knew he'd find his own path. But for now, we were a team, and while I breathed, nothing would happen to him. Meanwhile, the company had become almost legendary. Clients whispered stories about the owner, a former veteran, who personally punished anyone who tried to cheat. The myth grew. I liked it. Let them fear. Fear is the best fuel. One day, I caught a manager skimming off a contract. "Peter, you know why clients come back? Service guarantees quality?" "No, because they know we don't screw people over. And if anyone tries to screw us, they won't be found again." I fired Peter, replaced him with old Floyd, a relic from the 80s who used to sell stolen car batteries and believed honesty belonged in the business of the dead. "We run a clean operation now, Floyd," I told him. "Then I'll have to learn how to be clean, boss," he replied. "But I'll do my best not to screw it up. Just don't do what Brian did." "Who's that?" "Dead partner." "Got it, boss." Kyle and I started traveling. In Colorado, we rode snowmobiles. In Montana, we hunted. He shot a deer and, staring at it, asked me, "Dad, did it hurt when you killed people?" Honestly, yeah. No, because they tried to take you from me. And what hurts is losing. He understood, just nodded, strongly, maturely, and said, "Then I don't feel anything either." That deer was eating our breakfast. We burst out laughing. In the evenings, he'd sit beside me, rest his head on my shoulder, and stare into the fire. "Dad, yeah. Are you ever getting married again?" "Only if someone offers me Rambo in a skirt." "You, Dad, you're a perv." "Hey, I'm still human." 2 years passed. We became the family we never had. We traveled, ate, hunted, messed around, talked. No lies. No betrayals. One day, while we were on an island, he looked at me, gripping his fishing rod, and said, "Dad, I'm not afraid anymore." "Why's that?" "Because you're here. And because I've grown stronger." "Then I've only got one question, son." "What is it?" "Who's cleaning this fish?" Damn it. That's how character is forged. He laughed. So did I. And we sat there, watching the sunset. And in that sunset, there was no more betrayal. No pain. No fear. Just us. And silence. Sweet, earned, honest silence.